Hello, welcome to Telling Tales. This is a one-shot, which I've kind of made based on the Dungeon World system called Broken Teeth. I should probably introduce, in general, Telling Tales as a whole. We do this sort of thing a lot. We tell lots of different stories using lots of different systems, typically in a sort of horrific or worrisome tone. I'm not sure if tonight is going to turn out the same. If you want to check out our various social media, they are at Telling Tales RP. We have YouTube, Twitter, Patreon, all of that sort of stuff. And if you like what you see here, feel free to check us out on either on one-shots like this one, which we do usually on the first Saturday of every month, or come and see our more regular things, which are Call of Cthulhu on Mondays, Blades in the Dark on Tuesdays, and Simbaroom on Wednesdays. And that's basically it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce some lovely players. So first up, I'd like to bring on John. Hello, John. Are you well?
I'm well.
John,
I don't know where I was going with that. I was going to start on a downer, but no, I am well. I'm hyped.
That is lovely. As you can see, John is our fire starter. But also, John is going to be being our stream manager. So he's going to be sort of juggling many juggling balls, and it will be a glorious victory. Next up, we have Holly. Hello, Holly.
The goodest of afternoons to you.
The absolute goodest, and with as many H's as it is possible to have, Holly will be playing a wizard. I'm not sure if I pronounced it quite correctly.
You've got to get the H's in there.
Yeah, I've got more H's. It's right at the back of the throat. That's where I can. I hope you're well, Holly. And yes, Holly's just going to be being a player. John's basically just, putting her to shame with all of the
as usual.
Yes, step up, Holly.
I like to introduce a bit of player conflict just before starting this very wholesome and collaborative stream. Finally, last but not least, is Chris. Hello, Chris. Are you well?
Hello, everyone. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm happy to be here.
It's ideal. Chris is a lovely individual who will be a bard, as you can see from his description. Okay, so unlike many one-shots, we actually haven't done character creation yet, and that's because Dungeon World has quite a unique or interesting way of doing character creation, and I think it might make sense for us to just go into a bit of that. Broadly, for those people who haven't yet encountered Dungeon World, the way it works is we're all kind of collaboratively telling a story, and as that story unfolds, there are these things in Dungeon World called moves, and basically moves are just whenever something risky, whenever something can go wrong, that's when I'll ask the players to roll two six-sided dice and add their various stats to them. And basically, that will determine whether they are successful, or they're successful with a complication, or they're failing. But before we get to the actual sort of mechanics of the thing, I just want to emphasize, at any point, if I don't make sense or something sounds confusing, ask me questions. The whole thing is meant to be a conversation, so that's what we're going to do. But so let's dig into character creation. So step one of character creation is choosing a class. So this is something we did before stream. So we've got a fire starter who is actually the class, the Immolator. We've got a bard and we've got a wizard. Now, in general, I'm just going to say that the first 10 steps are really quick. So I want us to go through them sort of individually, and at the end of those 10 steps, we're going to introduce our character to the rest of the players. And it's at that point that we're going to like write down what we feel like our relationships are, and we're going to solidify a bit more about kind of the fiction as a whole. So let's just go through these things. You have these various character sheets. So the next step is choosing a race. You will have to tick one of the boxes, or if you want to go for something else, feel free to do that. Has everyone picked a race? Yeah. John is pensive and considerate.
The problem is if you give me a form-fillable character sheet where I can clicky button, I'm going to be clicky button. So I've clicked many of the buttons.
Absolutely. Okay, so you can choose a race, choose a name for your character. Some people might want to do this after a bit of stuff, but try and pick a name. You can just pick one from a list. It's totally fine. That's encouraged, or if you don't like any of the names on the list, pick something else. Then you choose a look, which is just going to be a variety of different choices that you have. You can pick stuff not from the list if you feel like it, or if you have a particular idea about how your character would look. It's totally fine. Then you choose your stats. Your stats are, well, on the physical sheets, they're just slightly above your things like strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. You choose from a combination of, like, you're assigning a 16, a 15, a 13, a 12, a 9, and an 8. And you're sort of freely choosing them. If you need any sort of guidance, feel free to ask. But in general, any combination is totally fine. This isn't like really strictly balanced. There are a few stats that are more relevant, like the wizard tends to want to be intelligent because they use intelligence. But I am deadly serious when I'm like, if you want to play a wizard with the lowest possible intelligence, that's fine. Just be a wizard who's not as good at what they normally are good at, but that's, or what they might potentially be good at. And that can be interesting too. So like free reign, don't worry about it too much. Yeah, let me know if you need any pointers in the right direction. So when you've chosen your stats, we're then going to figure out modifiers. So these are like the little brackets that are like, so if you choose a 16, then you get a +3. If you have a 15, it's a +1. And they're like listed next to the stats. The way that those work is they will interact with, that rolling 2d6 thing. So I might say, roll against strength, right? Because I think that this is a thing that requires lots of strength. So you will roll the 2 dice, you'll add them up, and then you will, if you have a +3, you will add 3 to that result. It's a fairly sort of straightforward system. And I should also mention that every roll in the game is aiming for the same target numbers. So you have the most common result is a 7 to 9, and a 7 to 9 is you manage to do the thing, but there is some complication or difficulty. If you roll lower than a 6, that means that you fail, or it's incredibly costly, or things go very badly usually when it's lower than a 6. But you get to mark experience, which probably is less relevant in a one shot because you're probably not going to be leveling up. But it's a nice sort of feature that rewards you for the inevitable failure. And the other side of that dice is if you roll a 10+, you get just a very good result, usually without too many complications. I might offer you a choice to go for extra glory with some complications, but for extra effect at that level. Or I might say you can choose to not have the complication, but whoever wants to not have a complication. So has everyone sort of chosen stats and got their modifiers sort of ready? Cool. So then you set your maximum HP, and this is the one that is based on your Constitution score, not your modifier. So if you had a 16 in Constitution, you're adding 16 to your class's base HP. So for, let me just double check this. So a wizard is 4+ Constitution, an immolator is 4+ Constitution, and a bard is 6+ Constitution. Cool. Then you might have a choice of starting moves. So these are like, these are things that are special to your class. These are things that you do and other people don't do. And some of them, I think for the immolator, they're just all filled in. For the bard, I believe you need to choose some bardic lore, which is where you choose an area of expertise. So, Chris, what do you have a choice for that?
Yeah, I think I've
okay,
had an idea.
Okay, cool. I'm
happy to talk it through, or we can save that.
We can. I think let's do it in the character introduction. But yeah, I think everyone else has everything in the moves section filled in already. Then we're going to choose alignment. Most of them are quite restricted. These are mainly role-playing guides. These are like what you feel like your character typically wants to do. And yeah, I think that some of the concepts in this are quite interesting. You know, sometimes your concept of evil might be what we might think of as traditional evil, like causing terror and fear in the case of the wizard. But sometimes, you know, evil is more about selfishness. And if you don't like any of the choices that are being presented, feel free to fill in your own. Finally, you might have to choose starting gear. And this is where, I don't know if you... some of these things you get by default, like the wizard gets a spell book and some dungeon rations, but then has to choose whether they're using leather armor or a bag of books, has to choose whether they're using a dagger or a staff. Yeah, one of the sort of quirks of Dungeon World is that your class deals a certain amount of damage. So you are just as, like, this is how competent you are with weapons. So in the case of a wizard, you're not particularly good at like fighting hand to hand. Whereas, you know, if you're an immolator, you do a lot of damage regardless of like what you're using to deal that damage. That's just the way it works. And I think it's an interesting sort of simplification of things. So, and if anyone wants to ask any questions about any of their, like what the kit is, I think in general, there's a concept of adventuring gear, which sometimes trips people up, but basically that is a magical bag that contains whatever standard thing that one might bring on an adventure. And when you pull it out, that was what was in the bag all along. So it's, you know, Schrodinger's adventuring bag or whatever. Just don't pull out, you know, a dead cat, I guess. That's not something that you would bring on an adventure. Anyway.
Why would you bring that up?
Well, it's Schrodinger's. Anyway. Okay. The collective groan is what I live for. Okay, so yeah. So are we all at that sort of stage? Are we kind of ready in general to introduce our characters? Once everyone is ready.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was just thinking of my alignment.
Okay.
Because I have their central tenet, but I'm trying to figure out where it goes on my and also their alignment scale.
Okay, interesting. I mean, if you're happy to tell us what your central tenet is, I might be able to discuss whether it sounds to me like any of the above, or if it sounds like something else that you could just have as your alignment.
So I would like to go for an immolator that is scared of the dark.
Scared of the dark.
And they're things that they are trying to wipe out literal darkness.
Okay.
It doesn't matter about evil, like necromancers pillaging the land. No. There's a dark room over there, and I need to go set it on fire.
The absence of darkness. Well, that doesn't sound too...
Is that lawful?
doesn't sound too evil. I think this might count as chaotic, because the definition for chaotic for the immolator is spread a dangerous new idea. And in all honesty, I think that there is some value to things occasionally being dark and not like literally light. But feel free to this is just at the end of the session. The way that you would add this is if you felt like you embraced your nature, this thing, then you get an extra experience. Is the mechanical effect of this, but it's just. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to spread the idea. Maybe. I mean, Chris looks very pumped by this chaotic idea.
I think it's a lovely take on the just burn everything psychopath that we normally get from classes that are called immolator.
It is lovely. I'm happy for you to go with whatever. And we'll just do the introduction. And I'll bear that in mind when you're justifying why you're doing various things that you're doing. It will be great. Okay, so just before we do the actual character introductions, if you're not talking, the thing you need to be doing is paying close attention to what the other people are saying, and with a particular eye to your bonds section. And this is just like a Mad Lib style thing. You can create new bonds if you like, as per usual. The mechanical effect of bonds is that when you help people, you can add to it, to their result based on how many bonds you have with a person. So this also works if you want to interfere with what they're doing. So you can have a greater or lesser effect depending on how many bonds you have with a person. In general, I think it's the most fun if you try to fill in like as many as you can. So like 3 is solid, but fill in at least 1, but ideally, fill it in with all 3. And the reason that you're doing the sort of listening is you're going, okay, so this person who's just been talking, that feels like this, that I have this bond with them, or I have this other, bond with this other person. And it's kind of a one-way thing. It's like, I will ask you about your bonds, but you're kind of this is how you feel about the other person, and they might feel differently about you, and that kind of can create some interesting sort of situations. So, shall we go? Let's go with the bard first. So tell us who you are. Give us a brief description of what you look like and what you're about.
So my character's name is Heart.
Is that like a heart, like a human heart?
Harte, as in kind of.
Okay.
Name.
Okay.
It's fairly dumpy, youngish, traveling musician. Not very well kept. Not a kempt person. Not kind of a court musician. He carries a very obtuse set of pipes, which are kind of bellows blown and almost like a little tiny organ to a certain extent,
nice.
Which he is well practiced with. He is also a very competent singer. He also carries a rapier, which seems to have been some kind of gift bestowed upon him by a patron. Check out our patron below if you want to bestow some gifts.
Oh, that was good. Intermeshing.
And
the fourth wall.
Yeah, he's kind of a caravaneer, minstrel, bard, singer. He has a lot of songs about kind of gods and their servants, but specifically kind of the antics they get up to, more kind of like the metamorphosis, more kind of like stories of gods just being not friendly and not nice, or just getting into trouble or making mistakes. He's not a pious person. He's more kind of joking and mocking.
Okay, very nice, very nice. So, where did you learn? Where did you learn to play this tiny organ or sing in this way?
Yeah. So
is there pipes, like Yeah.
The pipes are this specific kind of pipe. They're commonplace, but they're not commonplace to kind of the locale where we're in.
Okay.
So they would be kind of an instrument from far away that Hart has kind of learnt from one of their practitioners and travelled with them since. So they're quite an unusual instrument, not the kind of thing a bard would normally turn up with.
And it sounds like you've been traveling a long way. Is that an important part of Hart's personality? Is like this kind of like not staying in a given place for too long?
Yeah, it's kind of his lifestyle. Has been moving around most of his adult life and tries to do a little bit of good everywhere he stops, but doesn't, either out of fear of commitment or just a desire for adventure or just a desire to be the bringer of news and the bringer of stories from far away, just likes to stay in motion.
Okay, likes to stay in motion, maybe some sort of fear of commitment. Okay, who's the most powerful person you've ever offended?
Ooh, I'd say there have been some run-ins with staunch clergymen. Not that Hart is specifically anti-theistic, but some of the tales he sings are from stories that religious people would rather were forgotten about their particular patron deities.
Okay, so you and you see yourself maybe as preserving those true tales. Is that the thing, or do you have like a sort of do you dislike the church for other reasons, or do you feel like you're just telling the truth and they're just?
I think Hart really has found that once you find a specialization, once you learn one sea shanty, you're going to learn 20 more sea shanties. And like once you learn one song about how particular gods did all kinds of weird things as an animal to several other gods, then you're going to continue learning more songs like that. So maybe more of a passing interest / maybe a little bit mirthful. He's a little bit of a joker.
Okay, cool. Trying to think if I don't know. Is there like a? Are you after a magnum opus? Are you after like performing a great work? Like, is there like something? Do you feel like there's anything missing from you that like you need in order to really like be amazing, or do you think that you're amazing already?
Yeah, caught in the roaring foam of his as yet unspent youth, Hart is not in any particular rush to change the world. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. All right. I might come back to you a little bit, but for now, let's go to Holly. So tell us a bit about your wizard.
Okay, so my character is called Binklebart Heffingly.
Okay, hold on. Binklebart
Heffingly. 2 Fs.
Okay, Heffingly. Okay,
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Binklebart Heffingly.
He is a 94-year-old wizard. He spent his life studying at the Wizarding Academy.
Okay.
He's like quite thin. His eyes have seen too much stuff. He's got the classic pointed hat, obviously, as all wizards are required to wear. And his robes are like if you made a Hawaiian shirt into wizard's robes.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah. So he is the son of not the previous Duke Heffingly, but the previous Duke Heffingly. Okay. And over the course of his study, more dukes have gone past, to the point that now his grandnephew is the Duke Heffingly, and is threatening to remove his allowance due to the fact that he is incapable as a wizard. and despite studying for over 70 years, has learnt 2 actual spells.
Glorious. So you mentioned that you studied at the Wizarding Academy.
Yeah.
Why did you leave?
Because I could no longer afford the tuition due to having the allowance removed.
So you're just absolutely... Yeah.
I can no longer afford to study there.
Okay.
So yeah, he's making his way out into the world and trying to use what pitiful levels of magic he has to scrape by a living.
Okay. So this is great. Okay. So Hart mentioned the gods and taking the mick out of the gods. Do you have, as a user of magic, do you have any particular relation to the gods?
A relation would be a strong word. I think Binkelbart has a view that the gods are essentially useless, and the society has moved past the need for them.
Okay.
He thinks this despite being, and I cannot stress this enough, very bad at magic. No idea what he's doing, no way of comprehending even like basic levels of magic, let alone divine interventions.
Does he feel like he's really good? Or does he feel like...
he knows exactly how pathetic he is.
Does everyone else know exactly how...
Yes, he was the subject of much ridicule at the Academy for being truly terrible. He's the only wizard to have been through the same class 70 odd times.
But outside of that circle, potentially, maybe his spells are a bit more impressive.
If you were new to meeting him, then you might think that he was like... You'd immediately identify him as a wizard, and you wouldn't immediately realize that he is terrible at magic. However, the whole Hawaiian shirt robe thing,
kind of gives off that.
It doesn't lead you to believe that he is a professional in any realm. Okay,
so what was the most important ritual that you've ever messed up?
I believe that there will have been some form of like powerful research going on at the Academy, like really top level researchers trying to discover like what the fabric of reality is made of. And Binkelbart will have come in and attempted to help.
Maybe this was the catalyst that got you kicked out.
So thoroughly screwed up the research, and this has probably happened on more than one occasion, to the point where now, while he was still at the Academy, he was kept at arm's length from anything magical, which has only worsened the magical ability.
Okay, interesting. So when you left the Academy, what would you say is something important that you left behind, and what is something that you took with you?
I took with me as many books as I could.
Okay, so you stole their books. Cool.
Yeah, so I stole some important magical books. Well, Binkelbart thought that they were important, but again, he's still at the point where he doesn't actually know what most of the like terms are for magic. So he just grabbed the like 5 most fancy books that he could get his hands on.
Ideally.
And then in terms of something that was left behind, probably like whatever weird magical substance had been keeping him going for this many years without just kind of falling apart.
So he left some sort of like, as in like a flask, or as in like the source of some power, or?
No, I'm thinking like a magical drug or something,
Okay,
like
okay.
whatever magic cocaine would be.
I love the idea. I love the idea.
And that's the only thing that's been keeping him going through this whole 70 years.
That these, so I'm getting the impression in general that the wizards in this world are like, they're like quite anti-theistic. They're just like, yeah, all you need for magic is this great like drug, and you can just and they're just like power and hubris and classic, okay. I like it. This is really cool. All right, and can you guess which player we're coming to next? It's gonna be John. Tell us about your lovely immolator.
My immolator is a salamander, because I have an option of being a non-human whatever, and I'm going to pick it.
Yep.
Called Ember Tongue.
Ember Tongue. Okay.
They pronouns unknown, so default to they, partly because they're a salamander, and partly because they are so permanently caked in soot and filth that any sort of defining gendery characteristics are completely hidden, and they never correct the humans because they don't care.
In general, do you feel like this is a feature of more of salamanders, or do you feel like it's more of a feature of the people that you hang around, or like the fact that you hang around non-salamanders? Like, is it like that the Salamander Society exists in a kind of, genderless world, or is it that there is a thing going on there, but the outsiders don't know about it?
I think they will be probably largely genderless, because they probably lay eggs.
Okay.
So I'm just going to say that I'm going to say that they don't even like keep their eggs warm. They just set a fire under it. And
that's great.
So like when you're born, you don't have parents. You're just an egg with fire underneath it.
Okay.
So it's just that sometimes salamanders produce eggs, and that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that's.
And do they like? Yeah. So I guess I imagine that you. Sorry, I'm just like finding this really interesting. Like, so I guess do you, like.
Oh, you are breaking up. You have frozen.
You were born in a situation where like there's just a fire around you.
Yeah.
Oh, apologies. Am I back?
You are back.
So you're born in a world where there's, cool. I think there might be some delay. So if you're born in a world where there's kind of fire all around you, are you left, or is there like some sort of salamander commune that looks after you, or is it like very much you have to fight for your own survival, or how does it go when you're?
I think
when you're
there's
born?
an amount, like there are salamander communes or hideouts, probably underground, well lit underground.
Okay.
But for the most part, it is put to the younglings to find their own way.
Okay.
I think I'm going to say in areas where the salamander communes exist, humans probably don't awfully know about them. It is just that sometimes you will find salamander eggs in your fire, and then you'll have a pest baby salamander that will occasionally burn your house down.
Okay, that is glorious. Were you such a baby? Or were you
guess.
Born in the... Okay.
No, I was born in a random farmhouse in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and were you raised by humans or non-salamanders, or did they like boot you out?
I think they booted me out. Probably. I hatched from the egg.
Yeah.
Where they were cooking their dinner.
Oh dear.
I then upset their dinner, like knocked it flying,
yeah,
and caused a fire that burnt the farmhouse down.
Oh no.
And this was great.
Okay.
Because I was born in fire, and I brought fire to the world.
So you feel good about this overall?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then I was cast out into the dark night, and it was terrifying. And I've sworn never to let that happen ever again.
Okay, sorry, I feel like I've interrupted a large section of this, but that was fascinating to me. So tell us a bit more about your salamander. So Ember Tongue.
Ember Tongue,
Yes.
who is small and grime and soot smeared, and quite small, like I think about hip height on a human. Unsure whether this is actually the size salamanders are supposed to be, because I think they
Okay.
can vary from younglings to probably very big ones. They're like, is it alligators that just keep growing constantly?
Okay. Keep growing. Making note of this. Okay.
Yeah.
And are you fairly young as a salamander?
Yes, possibly. Yes, let's say
Okay.
yes.
Cool. So, actually, I don't. So, Hart, are you a human?
Yes, I am.
Okay, human, and the wizard. Are you? Sorry, Binklebart. Are you a human as well? Okay.
Yes,
so-
yeah, I'm a human.
Okay, so there's. I'm taking like at the moment there's a couple of humans and a salamander, and we get the impression that this. Ember Tongue has been. Have you been on the run for like your whole life? Have you?
Yeah, I think after fleeing from the darkness,
Mhm.
I've been moving from light source to light source and trying to convince these ignorant humans that darkness is a bad thing and they must do all they can to rally against it.
Okay, very good. And okay, so I had actually some other. So, were you ever afraid of fire?
No, I think fire is the
Comforting.
closest thing I've ever known to a mother
Okay.
/ parent /
Yeah, whatever salamander parent figure.
bed.
But okay, so it's just like the fire brings you comfort against the darkness.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's my security blanket, basically.
And what do you think of those that brand you as a demon?
Well, I mean, I don't see how that's relevant to what I'm trying to say. And,
Okay.
Just because you say mean things about someone doesn't mean they're wrong.
Okay.
And maybe they're the real demons.
They're the real demons. Okay.
They're the real demons.
So you're a very independently spirited sort of person.
Yes.
So you have become a master of the flames over the years. You've learned to control the fire. What did you sacrifice in order to master it? After all, fire consumes. What did you give up? What mattered to you? What maybe still matters to you, but it's no longer there.
I sacrificed a mirror that I at one point found something like a home that was basically like an old crate, possibly round the back of the Wizards Academy, where they'd thrown out a bunch of magical equipment and a bunch of mirrors. It was like a box made of mirrors, so that wherever you stood in it, you had no shadow because there was constantly light going through it. And that was as close to perfect as I could have had.
Sure.
And I gave that to the flame so that everyone may someday feel that sensation.
Okay.
And I have a symbol that represents my sacrifice, and I have a little bit of like
mirror.
It's basically just glass, blackened glass, but a little shard of.
So it used to be a mirror, and now it is blackened glass. Like now it's useless in that form, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's really cool. I really like that. Okay, and that's interesting. So Ember Tongue mentioned, having like found this comfort outside of the Wizards Academy. So I'm guessing that this was around the time that you were also like leaving the Wizards Academy. Is that how you guys maybe met, or actually, I suppose I should get you guys to read what bonds you have generated with the other characters. Have you got them in mind?
Yeah, I've got a couple down. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously feel free to write in more if you think of things while we're sort of talking. Okay, yeah. So I guess Binklebart. God, it's very hard to get used to saying it, but yeah, Binklebart. What are your bonds? Tell me about your bonds.
So I've got down to Ember Tongue will play an important role in the events to come. I have foreseen it. So most likely, while super high on whatever wizard cocaine he's been having for the past 70 years, he's had a vision of some kind of fire consuming darkness.
Okay.
And obviously that's Ember Tongue. Like,
okay.
Obviously.
And like, so on that one, Ember Tongue, so you guys, sorry, I should probably set the scene. You guys are traveling around together, doing adventures. That's kind of a given in this thing. So part of this bond process is like, you know, we're establishing why we are connected in these various ways. So do you feel, do you sort of reciprocate that? Like, do you believe the great prophecy that Binklebart has for you, or like, do you even know about it?
I don't know if I necessarily know so much, but I see myself sort of like a wandering truth spreader, proletizer. So someone who clearly has magical credentials and is a powerful wizard telling me that I will do something great is like, yes, you're right, and you will be my disciple.
Okay, so yes, this is great. So Binklebart, from your perspective, is like hot shit in terms of wizard. Is like
of course, cool. He's got all these books. Why would you have books if you're not a wizard?
Marked like library only. Be bad. Okay, cool. What are your other bonds?
So for Ember Tongue, I've also put down that they have a skill that Binklebart lacks, and therefore he's got to learn as much as he can about how to control fire from Ember Tongue, but without Ember Tongue noticing, because that's embarrassing. So
doesn't want to lose respect or
exactly.
Or whatever. Okay.
He's going to try and secretly learn as much as he can about how to control the fire.
Okay, very good. Do you have any?
Even though I'm sure that it's like a genetic thing, that there's no chance.
Hey, who knows if there's those kind of possibilities? Okay. And any more bonds do you have?
Not relating to Ember Tongue, but for Heart, I've said that Heart is keeping an important secret from me because Binklebart doesn't trust bards or minstrels. One of them once sang a song that they didn't quite get. Again, probably while super high. And it led them to a weird place. And since then, they're not into music.
Okay, so you're not keen on music, and you believe that Heart is keeping a secret from?
Yes, yeah.
From you? Okay, Heart. Are you keeping a secret, or are you making Binklebart believe that you're keeping a secret? Like, is there anything like that?
I think that I have worked out Binklebart's kind of position in the nobility, and maybe understands a little bit more about the intrigues and the potential leverages that he still has access to, which I'm keeping to myself as leverage.
Okay. So yeah, and you're trying to use this. Okay, that's cool. I should probably also ask, because there are 2 humans in this party, like, are humans the dominant force in this world? Is that a thing? Let's say first heart. Are humans the dominant force?
Humans are kind of the
most common.
The trading language is the language of humans, not necessarily the ruling language, not necessarily the scholarly languages, but it's humans generally run the caravans.
Okay, so humans run the caravans, and Binklebart, do you agree with that perspective? Do you feel like humans are like that?
I agree to a certain extent, but I think that
are all humans like that, or
yeah, I think when it comes to like superiority or whatever, that's not something that he goes in for, mainly because he's been surpassed by so many elves in the academy at this point.
So there are elves.
You lose all sense of superiority after, yeah.
And are we? Do we think that elves in general are kind of they're rarer but more powerful in general? Is that the thing we're going for elves?
They're probably a little bit more rare than humans, but I think they're definitely they have a more innate sense of magic.
Are the cities and villages actually, and maybe this one would be one for Ember Tongue, so you're obviously a salamander. Are the cities in general, are they like humans, loads of humans, and a couple of random occasional salamanders, elves, dwarves? Or are they like, there's a whole just cornucopia of different types of things in general? Or is it more of a mix?
In
your
think
experience?
From the humans' perspective, from the street level perspective, it is mostly humans with, like, all told, maybe like a quarter others wandering about. But that is because most humans don't know that the other races they're there, they're just not usually where the humans are. Like, salamanders are usually underground. Elves are usually in the same place, but slightly outside of where the humans are. In
Elves
like
are
a sort of
usually in the
Feyland kind of way.
Feyland. Interesting.
And I think just most humans are like, we are the most populous. But that is because they have no idea what the other races are doing.
Yeah, I'm getting this real sort of theme of like, the humans are kind of like, oh yeah, we're just sort of all over the place, and the default is human, and then the other races are a bit like, this is not good. It's not as peachy as everyone's making it out. Okay, so who shall we go to next for bonds? I'm buzzing a bit. Yeah, let's go to heart. What are your bonds?
So this is not my first adventure with Ember Tongue.
Okay.
In fact, I think we've kind of been working. The three of us have been together for a while, and I think that the dynamic is Heart occupies this weird dichotomy of simultaneously being very enchanted by Ember Tongue's kind of innocence and drive and a little bit of his mystique, but also aware that between Ember Tongue and Binklebart, they're neither of them are particularly competent. So
okay. I'll throw it back to the other two. Do you both? Okay, actually, first, Ember Tongue. Do you recognize this thing? Do you know that that Heart thinks of you in this way? Do you feel good about it, or do you like? Is it just like a known thing between you guys?
So you'll think for Ember Tongue was a slightly enchanted, but thinks they're naive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ember Tongue picks up on the camaraderie and maybe sees a possible another follower.
Yeah.
any sort of implication that they are naive would go completely over their
So
head.
whenever that happens, it goes over your head. So you just
Yeah.
think, okay,
Like,
okay.
if anything, it's like, yes, this bard has recognized me as pure of heart and with good purpose.
Okay, I like this. I like this.
It's adorable. So another thing I have, which I quite like now I've listened to the other stories, is I sang Stungs of Ember Tongue long before I ever met them in person. Specifically, I have a song about a salamander prophecy of one who would come to bring light to all shadows, and so there is kind of, like I said, there's this dual split of like legitimate what's going on. Could this be the chosen one of this weird ancient salamander song, and this kid's going to get himself and probably the rest of us killed.
Very good, very good. Do you have any more bonds with anyone?
I think Binklebart is often the butt of my jokes. I think we do have kind of a working relationship that isn't awful. But
okay.
I think, again, maybe my not disdain, but maybe my acknowledgement of them not being the most competent people in the world has not been lost on Binklebart.
Okay, and is that the case, Binklebart? Do you?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's very used to being the butt of the joke and very used to people who know him in any way, knowing that he's completely incompetent. Yeah,
sure. But at least for now, yeah.
Separate from the other discussions I actually had written beforehand that Binklebart does not trust me, and for good reason. And now we've already threshed that out. So that was a nice narrative anomaly.
For good reason. Is there anything extra that is a good reason for Binklebart not to trust you, or is that the only?
I think generally Hart has an aura of attempted goodness. So he's a bit of a joker, not necessarily a trickster, and not really mean spirited. But sure. I think maybe there's definitely a prejudice towards bards and minstrels coming from Binklebart. I sense.
Sure. Okay. And finally, let's go back to Ember Tongue. What are your bonds with everyone else?
So I'll start with Binklebart. As slightly already discussed, I see Binklebart as my disciple.
Okay.
Partly because he has told of this fantastic prophecy and recognized me as a Lightbringer. But also, I think I've slightly picked up that he's asking a lot of questions about how I do the things I do. And while obviously the answer is just dunno, just do them, that's never the answer I give, obviously. Obviously, I make it sound impressive. And I also have that I cast something into the fire for Binklebart and still owe them their due.
Okay.
So it's something that I took as like a bit of an initiation for him, but he maybe didn't, is when we like started journeying together, he handed me an important document and had me give it to the fire as like a sacrifice on his behalf. And someday I will have to repay this. What I don't know is it's actually his like bill from the academy saying, you have outstanding debts, get out.
Yeah. I'm good with that. with that.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that was the thing I was going to ask. So Binklebart gave Ember Tongue the
an important wizard document.
An important wizard document that was so my understanding is that the for the salamanders and the their sort of in general control of the fire, sacrifice is very important. And so obviously for you, Ember Tongue, you believe that this document that Binklebart gave you was like something really personally important and valuable to them, and like an appropriate thing to sacrifice.
Yes.
And in actuality, it wasn't an important thing. It was just like it wasn't a thing that was of great significance or importance, and you don't currently know that about about Winklebart. I guess, like, how would you feel if you found out that thing was not of great value? Like, would that be like a deep offense? Perhaps they would then owe you something, right? Or perhaps I'm just twisting the knife here. You can't
Just
get away
trying to figure out how to set up the party, all falling apart.
No, I mean, I don't know. I think it's really nice that there is a kind of tension there of, like, you believe that like this is a disciple who has entrusted you and is sort of following your principles of, like, sacrifice for power, but maybe hasn't actually sacrificed for power. Maybe has just gone for power.
I think Ember Tongue would probably disagree.
Okay.
Like, if someone gone, you know, that thing you burnt was actually just like spam, they'd be like, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was very important. It had the Academy's, like,
signature on it,
letterhead on it.
Sure.
Obviously, it was important. You're wrong.
Very good.
And you're just trying to put divisions between me and my disciple.
Oh, that's great. Just so
I think
blind.
once they are very naive.
Yeah.
But I think once they get something in their head that it has significance, they will not let go that it has significance.
Okay.
And it's like, clearly you just don't recognize the significance of it. But I do.
Okay. That is interesting. All right. And with that, I think we have you have an additional.
I also have my bonds for heart.
Oh yes.
So I have heart can spread my truth, because I've seen him been chased out of villages for telling tales of gods and legends, and clearly important tales that everyone needs to hear. And I mean, he sings my song, so clearly that's important. And I also have that I have burned our enemies for heart, because I think there was one particular occasion where you were performing in a pub and the local cleric came in and started reading you the riot act, and I set the cleric's cloak on fire.
And presumably this has become a song?
I hope so.
At the very least, a story.
So and when this happened, did you did you appreciate that act of solidarity that Ember Tongue showed you?
I think, Hart being the Joker would have probably found it very amusing, assuming that the priest was not entirely burnt to a crisp, but just put into even more of a strop. And assuming we were probably run out of town after, well, not run out of town, but our stay may have been cut short.
I think once everyone stopped laughing, then
yeah.
Well, it's interesting because so far I think we've mentioned a lot of, like, so there are clearly some people who are very pious and religious, and I think this party is very sort of like turned against that to some extent because of whatever, like. And I'm also getting from this that various religions are quite big in this world, and that's why you're kind of continually on the move. But not necessarily that you guys are super interested in the religion, but like actually, maybe that's a good question. What is each of your like main problem with the dominant religions of this world? Like, do you all? I think that Hart has sort of mentioned also making light of lots of things. So, just thinks that he wants to sing his funny songs, and the religions aren't okay with funny songs, so it's just tough. How do Ember Tongue and Winklebart sort of feel about that?
I think Ember Tongue doesn't really have anything supposedly against any of the existing religions, other than the fact that they don't like them for being a small fiery lizard person. And like they're all missing the point. None of them are talking about the real threat.
Sure, yeah, that's great. So like you're just like, they're just misguided, and
they're just talking about stuff like love each other and like go to war with heretics, and they're not fighting the real problems. It still turns dark every night.
Yep. And Binklebart, because you're quite old, and presumably you remember, when the talk of going to war with heretics wasn't just talk, and maybe the mages and wizards were not always sort of so well thought of.
Yeah, I think that he's just got like an inherent mistrust. He inherently mistrusts a lot of people for lots of weird reasons.
Smells funny.
Yeah, exactly. But
he is an old man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just doesn't like people because they look funny. Yeah. But I think, as far as religion itself is concerned, his main thing is just that none of it has been rigorously researched as it should be, despite the fact that he has no idea what that rigorous research would be. I think that's the main thing, is that he just doesn't really trust it.
Oh my god, Binklebart would definitely just start arguments with random people on fantasy.
Yes. Yeah.
Not even Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What, so the crystal wall that contains all of the faces and their opinions that exists in the center of towns, and that the wizards set up to bolster their forces. Yeah.
We need more escapism, not less.
Okay. So we're ditching the crystal wall of faces.
No more walls of faces for you. You've had enough.
No walls of faces. Good, gotcha. And on that note, I think we are now done with character creation. If there's any questions that anyone has for each other or for me, now would be the time. But otherwise,
I do have one, which is about my bag of books. I don't quite understand how that defends me from a stylistic point of view. Have I just got them strapped around me so that anything that hits me will hit a book instead?
I mean, you can't, do you want that to be the case? Do you want it to be literally they are thick and they act as like armor or covering every ounce of your body?
It says 5 uses, so I don't know if I'm like just holding up a book every time someone hits me and it just destroys the book.
So potentially, what about the idea of each of the books have, like, you don't really understand them very well because you nicked them, but you sometimes just, like, in a moment of desperation, you call upon the magic contained within the books, and that, like, does something. You're not sure what it will do, but it typically prevents damage.
Typically.
Like, in a moment of desperation, I suppose that's what you turn to, right?
Yeah. No, I am 100% happy for that to be what's going on. I also have one thing I did forget to mention about my character, which probably... No, it might come up. Anytime they cast invisibility, they are allergic to using that spell, so they will start sneezing.
Okay, allergic to... Hold on, that's an important... Allergic to invisibility.
Specifically the spell invisibility, which is one of the 2 that he has learned.
Okay, very good.
Does that mean that if someone else uses invisibility near you, you also start sneezing?
Yes. I am allergic to the spell invisibility.
Okay, very good. Very
Actual God mode min-maxing rule loophole discovered.
Yeah, sure. You can be allergic to invisibility. Do you have any other, like, spells that like trigger any of your, like, You know.
No, I only have magic missile and invisibility that are like actual spells, and magic missile is just it's the first thing that you learn at wizard school, and that is the only thing that Binklebot has been able to actually learn. Yeah.
All right. Well, does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Well, then I think we're ready for a quick 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we will begin the session, and it will be glorious. So, yes. Goodbye.